Are you tired of winning? Alright, let me cook then. Jungle Quinn is one of my favorite picks in the jungle as of late, and for good reason. With a kit focused on early game harass and resource attention, while at the same time having a roaming based ultimate that takes away from this very strength, I always found it very perplexing to play this champion in its intended role in the top lane. However, by shifting Quinn's unique permanent roaming ability over to a high flexibility role in the jungle, she can become an absolute menace, providing consistent and unbelievable pressure under the right circumstances. Frankly, the way this build works doesn't even really make sense until you put it all together. With consistent roaming, high burst potential in ganks, and the ability to constantly put pressure across the entire map, I'm not joking, the entire map, it's an incredibly fun and rewarding build to go for in the right conditions. Here's a quick breakdown of how we'll be going over the video. I'll touch on general concept of Jungle Quinn's new purpose as a champion and what success looks like in games that you are doing well on her. We'll then discuss different components of her kit and how we can work better to optimize each one of these. This includes going over different matchups, rune optimizations, ability maxing, your build, and how to play out each phase of the game. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, would really appreciate a like on it if it helped you out. Moving on. Let's kick things off with how this pick's supposed to work, alright? Jungle Quinn creates a very specific but very unique style of jungle that effectively invests all resources into creating as much chaos and pressure on the map as possible, and then redirecting that pressure to lead into future plays and to force objectives. This is defined by her unique blend of pretty good kill pressure in the early game, but pretty terrible clear speed, similar to other kill threat junglers like Lee Sin or Rek'Sai. This means that as a result, we end up with the very niche conditions that Quinn needs in order to succeed. If for some reason that she cannot utilize her strength, or if she's forced to play outside her ideal conditions, there's a very high chance that she will be useless, even if she were to get a lead. The same applies if the enemy has any tanks on their team. Much like these facilitator champions, once the enemy starts speccing a lot of tank champions, it very quickly becomes very hard for Quinn to really have an impact at this point stat-wise. However, this is where the unique strength of Jungle Quinn shines, that basically no other champ in the game can match. Consistent, high levels of movement speed. Let's think about Quinn top. Her strengths revolve around two main things: her ability to be a ranged lane bully, which draws resources to her, and her crux ability in her ultimate, which is selfless and often makes her give up resources. This is a super strange dichotomy that I don't really see in a lot of champions and just makes for a very weird playstyle overall. However, when you shift this dynamic to jungle, a role where you can easily divert both of these strengths into a flexible, selfless playstyle, this becomes extremely impressive. This gets especially apparent if she's ahead, since she can spread her agency across the entire map without any fear and any consequence. And fear is what she spreads across her enemies in this situation. The moment she has any lead, Quinn can immediately respond to any play on the map, any single bit of overextension by the enemy team, and completely dissect teams for it. Quinn is probably the only champion in the game to completely break this conventional jungle logic, as normal jungle tracking doesn't really make sense for her at all. Quinn doesn't want to farm camps, she wants to farm you. If you want to gank bot, then fly across the map to gank top right after, she can do that extremely easily. Then, if you want to go back bot to just get dragon after that, you're totally free to do so. It's this phase that allows Quinn jungle to be some of the most impressive League of Legends I've played in recent time. Now let's talk when to pick Jungle Quinn. While Quinn can have some of the early game threat and skirmish potential matching that of other high octane facilitator champions like Jarvan, Lee Sin, or Rek'Sai, one thing for certain is that she doesn't even come close to these champions in terms of their flexibility. Frankly, I think there's a lot of situations where Quinn jungle can be pretty bad. The first of these is if the enemy has any tanks. While champions like Lee Sin or J4 are not really tank shredders by any means, they can still at least contribute and facilitate in teamfights with their high impact CC. Meanwhile, Quinn, yeah. Realistically speaking, outside of her early game statistic capabilities and her mobility, it can be very easy for Quinn to fall off a cliff and just not be relevant into the wrong composition. If the enemy team has any tanks, like I mentioned, or if your team can't really take advantage of the numbers advantage situations that she can create, then it's really hard for her to really convert. Because of this, you have to be very selective about when you pick Quinn. If possible, I would recommend holding her to a later slot in draft to give yourself that leverage. Think of her slotting similarly to champions like Fiddlesticks or Kindred, hard to execute but really disgusting in that situation. You also want champions that do enjoy side laning, at least to some extent. So this could be either be bruisers like Camille or Aurelia, or full split pushers like Jax or Fiora. Just any champions that can be very beneficial or can really appreciate your roaming potential. Let's quickly brush over how your ability usage can alter when it comes to Jungle Quinn. When it comes to her, the purpose for each of your abilities does alter slightly, and most obviously with your ultimate. Starting with clearing, each of Quinn's abilities surprisingly has a good use in optimizing her clear. Her Q is a disarm and works to keep her healthy. Her W, heightened senses, can give great information surrounding entire quadrants of the jungle and can also provide a visual around objectives, regardless of whether her team has vision control or not. You can also use it in the right position to reveal camps and use your E to traverse over. Speaking of which, Quinn's Vault is also good for jumping over walls if you need to cross, and great for disjointing the auto attacks of camps in the early games, which it also contributes to keeping up a healthy clear. This does not make her clear faster though, it's pretty bad. For ganking combos, you ideally want to start behind the enemy and lead with your Vault. This lets you maximize the value of the backflip and maintain that distance behind the enemy. From there, it's pretty much weaving your passive auto attack boosters with the rest of your abilities. With your ult, you'll also get an additional passive proc, so make sure to proc the second part of her active before leading into the rest of her abilities. With the Jungle Quinn Airlines build, there's a couple of rune sets that could work, but the trees that I commonly rely on involve a Domination primary tree and a Sorcery secondary tree. For the most part, all of your runes are going to be the same, just with a different keystone depending on how much fun you want to have. For maximum pressure on side lane or just roaming in general, my favorite rune is consistently Predator. It's just so funny and satisfying to watch Quinn rotate to plays at absolute Mach 1 speeds. However, I would say that if you need the maximum amount of early game pressure, Electrocute can be a slightly more optimal option. Take Predator though, it's fun. After this, your remaining runes in the Domination tree are as follows. Either Cheap Shot or Sudden Impact, depending on whether the lethality from Sudden Impact will be valuable to you, Zombie Award or Eyeball Collection in the third row, and of course Relentless Hunter to further contribute to your rotation speed. For your secondary tree, I pretty much always go Sorcery for the movement speed runes. There are so many speed boosts within the build already that you just want to take Celerity and Water Walking. Once you list everything together, you basically have the Exodia build of roaming. You've got Predator, Relentless Hunter, Celerity, Water Walking, her ultimate, Mobility Boots, Yomu's, which is her most common mythic, the Gust Walker Hatchling, which is the speed boosting jungle item, and Ghost. Take Ghost by the way. I'll touch on the items to also make this happen later on, but with all of this combined, it equates to a standard roaming movement speed of around 700 to 800 in the mid game, and this can further increase way beyond this in the later phases of the game. This transitions well into the itemization piece with Quinn. To start, alright, you know which jungle item we're getting. After your first clear and into your first recall, you want to pick up boots so that you actually have a keystone, as well as work your way into your mythic item. Items are always changing drastically in League, so I don't want to get extremely specific about which item to get at which time, but I will give some overall item recommendations for the playstyle you're looking for. As of the time of making this video, the best item to pick up overall first is Yomu's, for the move speed boost and the insane damage power spike that it offers to Quinn. Right now, it's currently a mythic item, but whether it's a mythic or not, I think this item is a perfect fit for the roaming playstyle of Quinn Airlines. With Yomu's and tier 1 boots, the build is honestly pretty much online from this point already. Everything else I'd say just sharpens her damage curve and it helps increase her threat. Your tier 2 boots are almost always going to be mobility boots for obvious reasons. However, I recommend holding off on getting them until you are in a comfortable state in terms of your damage. You're investing 700 gold into being able to spread yourself thinner across the map and not getting any combat stats. So only buy these once you're super confident that you're strong enough to be useful in skirmishes. Then it's a worthy purchase. From here, again, I won't really be specific in terms of what items to get, but I'll give some suggestions. Keep in mind that Quinn can itemize at this point into a mobile assassin. In some metas, we'll see that the build can use lethality items to do the trick, but ever since Prowler's Claw doesn't really have a dash anymore, the current build I like to go for revolves around energized crit items, which provides a really thick auto attack after you land your skirmish. For me, this means things like Storm Razor, Static Shiv, and Rapid Fire Cannon have been great choices, then finishing off with whatever crit item you basically need at that point. I've also tried variants with Tank Quinn based around movement speed items like Deadman's Plate and Turbo Chem Tank, but since Quinn doesn't really have any other CC, there isn't much benefit for her getting that mobility in the first place. If you want to pick up Deadman's Plate by itself, it could also work as a third item, but Quinn shines being able to translate a high level of kill threat all throughout the map, so itemizing damage will likely net you the most success. On to team fighting. Don't do it. Quinn has never been a great team fighter in League, and even in the jungle role, it doesn't really change that significantly. If you're obscenely fed or ahead, Quinn can force fights to happen like normal assassins, in which case she can just nuke an enemy backliner and hope for an escape. However, Quinn's specialty is really in her ability to efficiently avoid these situations. Use her class-leading roaming power to force chaos and numbers advantages when playing 2 or even 3 lanes at times. This is where she has the most success. If you're forced into a normal teamfight, however, feel free to treat Quinn like a standard DPS backliner. Hit the targets you can, at the ranges you can. You don't really have many tools to weave around fights like normal junglers would, so it's best to respect your distance and clean up when given to you. Quinn jungle is not your typical jungle experience. When times are good, it's really good. And if not, they're anything but that. However, this build is some of the most fun I've had in the jungle as of yet, and honestly, I think this is more viable than what you may think. Give it a try in your own games and let me know how it goes. Anyways, that's it from me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay fresh.